Alright, Ty, here we go. I'm going to show you how to make this collage in as few steps as possible without breathing into my mic too much. Okay, so I had a pretty good plan going forward with this one. It's usually really good to pre-plan these to make sure you're gathering the right images. So I'm in Bridge right now. So I have this bush in my parents' front yard that I really liked. So I'm visiting them for my birthday last week. So I got a bunch of different angles of this bush. It was nice and windy. Kind of like going Picasso style here, so you're like getting all angles at the same time. It's one strategy. Okay, so I started a few here that I liked. Okay, these are ones I already selected. I'm gonna go ahead and open all of these in Photoshop. All right. So I'm not gonna do any editing to them. I don't really care. I'm gonna edit them in Photoshop as I go. I don't really know exactly what's gonna happen yet, so we're just gonna go with it. These are 144 megabyte images, so these are going to take a while to load. Just give me like 20 seconds. Bet you didn't think I was actually going to make this video, huh? Joke's on you! Getting there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 7. Alright, I'm going to close this one that I was working on earlier. I'm just going to save that real quick. Okay. So I'm going to pick a base one that I like. I'm generally going to pick one that's kind of big. Normally when I start these, I usually start with a black and white back layer. So I'm going to pick one that I think would be a really good back layer, and usually one that has a lot of depth to it. So some of these are kind of flat. I've got some depth with the house in the back. This one's not bad. I like this one a lot because there's lots of space around it. I can see into the distance here and back over here. This one's pretty good. So I use black and white as the first layer because it's a good base layer. It absorbs a lot of color, which is really nice. It also lets me actually see that it's a back layer, so there's actually some separation. So I'm going to do, instead of just doing a basic black and white kind of adjustment, instead of doing like image mode grayscale, I'm going to go down here to layer adjustments and go to black and white. Now all it's going to do is to individually mix each color. So if I have kind of a dark gray sky here, I can kind of adjust that blue down or those cyans down and get some of that detail back. I can also bump up those greens and yellows to make those a little brighter. So I'm just kind of adjust this till I get something that I want. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can kind of be whatever you want it to be. Like if you want to go super dark, you can do that, but I kind of want something in between. That's pretty good. I'm also going to do a quick levels adjustment on this layer itself. So I'm just doing Control L. I'll just do it up here, Image, Adjustments, Levels. So I just want to get some of that information back. So I'm just going to slide that down just a little bit. Just a little bit. And then I'm going to bring this up a little bit. So I'm watching that sky right there. I just want a little bit of separation. That's pretty good. Okay, so let's move my base layer. I'm going to move this all the way over here just to stay organized. And I'm just going to drop each one of these on. My plan for this was to just layer the bush over and over again and get all these really cool mixed layers and different lighting patterns on them. So I'm just going to start there. So I'm just dragging them out to the side, going back to my original one, and then using my move cursor, dragging it on top. So if you're holding down shift while you drag, it'll drag right on top and it'll center it. And I'm going to close these as I go. So what I don't want to do, what happened, is that it dropped underneath my black and white layer down here in the bottom right. So I'm just going to move that up, make sure it's on top. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing with each one. I'll just talk through each one. So I just put a layer mask on right here. And then I'm going right there. I switch to my black paint. And then I'm going to go to my brush over here. Big brush tool. And I like a big fat brush so it covers more area, but I want to get a little bit of mark making. So I want to make sure it's big enough to where I'm covering this area. I'm not going over it too slowly, but small enough to where I'm getting some kind of bubbly kind of look to it. Then I'm just going to kind of work my way around these bushes, kind of in this like little bubbly pattern, just like that. And then I do this so I can see it easier, and then I'm going to invert it. So if you watch this mask in the bottom right, it goes from black and white to white and black. It's just Control I. Okay. So that is image adjustments and invert right there. Okay. So I'm just going to do that over and over again. Moving on down. Okay. Next one. Okay. As I'm moving down, I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller and smaller. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep layering and layering and not actually going to see anything. So I'm going to go just a little bit lower. And I'm just kind of following some of those leaf structures. All right. So now I'm starting to get a weird cluster up here, and I kind of want to fill some of this area down here too. So I'm going to start to move some of these images around a little bit. So I'm going to drag this on top, close this one, and then instead of this being centered, I'm just going to click and drag it down just a little bit. I don't really care that it's not working up there because I'm not really going to use that part of the image, so it's not going to matter. So right around there, I'm going to get some bush on the bottom. Still using that same brush size. And you don't really, it's not like coloring inside the lines, you can really kind of do anything you want. So right now I'm filling in a little too much, so I don't really like that. So I'm actually going to do that whole one layer over. I'm going to brush it even smaller. So I'm using a smaller brush so I can like get some of those other layers to shine through. And we can go back and edit that too as we want, but that's just something I noticed. All right, that's much better. So we get a much cooler texture out of that. Now for this one, let's see. I'm gonna move that one down a little bit too. Actually, I'm gonna just go to this one, move that one down a little bit. There we go. And then this one's a little taller, move that one up. So on and so forth. And my last one. So it's getting a little crazy, which I like. I think it's filling a pretty good area. I'm just going to drag this one right in the bottom. A little bit down. Okay. So I got a pretty wacky bush. That's pretty dope. So obviously it doesn't look like that yet, right? There's a lot of other stuff to do. So once I get like a basic structure down, I start playing with color. There's one more structure thing I need to do to get it what I wanted to do this one. So I started like kind of like whenever I do landscapes, there's always like a basic composition to follow. So I usually do like an S curve going through. So I'm actually going to grab one more of these again. I'll just grab. Actually, I'll use one I didn't use. How's that sound? Open that up. Okay. And this one I'm going to bring all the way down to the bottom. So all I want out of this one is a big S curve. So I'm actually going to turn all these little layers off real quick. So I'm just going to start up here and just kind of work my way down just to get that kind of curve going through. And invert that again, turn all these layers back on, and now I have some kind of like actual motion going through it. So you can edit that if you want, take a little bit in, take a little bit out. I kind of like those trees up there, so I'm just going to edit that out just a little bit. Maybe this way and then that way. Again, I'm pretty rough with all this stuff, so it doesn't really matter too much. That's pretty good. Alright, so color patterns. So there's already some stuff going on here. I've got some light pinks, I've got all these greens and yellows. There's kind of some cyans going on here, but fuck it, let's do whatever we want. So I'm going to pick I'm going to go up 2 layers, add a new layer that's blank, and then I usually keep Adobe Color open. I don't have it open right now. So I'm just going to kind of fly with it. So I'm just going to pick a color. I usually like pinks quite a bit, so this kind of hot pink's pretty dope. I'm going to just drop that in there. And then I usually do a difference or an exclusion blending layer. If you don't know what a blending layer is, it essentially allows whatever that layer is to interact with layers below it in a special way. They're all pretty fun. This section right here is my favorite. So exclusion and difference usually does some pretty cool things with texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop that in there. I'm going to adjust my fill a little bit, just let some of that texture shine through a little bit more. Then I'm going to mask it. So again, I don't want a whole lot of that shining through. I just want some of these bits right here, right? So some of that stuff coming out of the bushes. So I'm going to just kind of go in some of those areas. And again, this is just really subtle stuff. Just those little areas. Invert. I got a little extra color. So I'm going to do that again, a couple layers up, one more time. A neat trick you can do if you're not sure where to go with colors is to duplicate the color that you already have. So I can duplicate that, push that up there, delete this layer mask, get rid of this layer too. And then if you're not sure what color would look good, you can just invert this color. So you already have an automatic analogous relationship. So same thing with Control I again, right? Control I inverts, so get that green more, right? So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to brush that in a little bit. It's a little further up, so it gets in a few more pockets. So I'm just going to brush that in. Maybe some of those areas. Maybe up here in that roof. Down here a little bit. That'd be pretty dope. Invert that again. I get some more color again. So I like complex color patterns. So I usually go for like triadics normally. So at least 4. So you can see I did like orange, cyans, blues, a few yellows and greens, right? So let's see, if we're doing orange and, not orange, green and pink. What's green and pink? What's another color goes with green and pink? Probably blue. So I'm going to look for another high saturation blue color. So I'm just going to drag this over, maybe like a cyan over here. Paint that in. Same fucking thing, man. Just going to brush that shit in. Alright, so this one's going to be fun because it's mostly on top, so we get a lot of color. Alright, that's way too much though. Holy shit. Oh, and we got to do difference. That's better. Alright, can I do difference? Good. Okay. So that's all good. I got some extra color in there. Still not anywhere near what we got going on though, right? There's a lot of shit going on. So it kind of changes, and I might kind of fluctuate, move some stuff around, move stuff up and down. Some of these layers are a little thick, so I'm actually going to take and go back in. So if I'm moving this one around, I want to see where that's actually popping through and where it's not popping through. So one of these layers is really heavy. It's that one. So I'm going to just kind of work some of those areas back out lightly. On the wrong layer again. Okay. Again, it's whatever you want to do. I'm trying to do in some smaller motions here just to let some more areas in. Some of those marks I don't like, so I'm just kind of going back a few steps. What I might do is move some of those layers up and down. So some of these might want to go on top a little bit more. Even bring it all the way up top. I don't know. That one's a little too thick. It's a lot of play. It's a whole lot of play. I don't have an exact method or science to it. I'm just kind of going for it. Once I get a good structure down though, and that's pretty much okay, I look at the overall color structure again, and I have a lot of pinks up top and not a lot bottom. So I want to paint some of those pinks back in. So it's kind of balancing color out a little bit. So I'm just going back to that pink layer. I'm going to paint some pink down here in, just some dabbles here and there. Yeah. Okay. And then once I get an overall structure down, I like to kind of add some more details, right? So I try to echo a lot of the textures in here. So I have a lot of these kind of feathery textures going on. So I'll usually find another image that I can add in to do some of those things. And I usually just go out and just collect a shit ton of images from one area, and I kind of mix it together like it would be like a food or something like that. So like you get a recipe for all these ingredients that you want, you just kind of put it together the way you want to. So I also have some fern images in here that I really liked for my parents' yard. Let's see. There's these top-down ones. And this kind of reminds me of the bush too. It's kind of coming up a little bit, right? So let's see. I've got some that are focused on the top, some are focused on the bottom. I kind of like that texture a lot more. I think this is the one I used earlier. So I'm gonna open up this bad boy. All right, drag it on in. Okay, and I'm using this kind of as a template just to draw on, right? So I'm going to put this on top, and I'm going to trace it. So I'm going to switch from the brush to the pencil tool, so you can get a much sharper line. So you can see it's a square instead of a round, so you can get like sharper lines with it. This is good for like drawing like more detailed things. It also gives it that weird digital look. And all I'm going to do is kind of trace over some of these fern marks. So I want some of these exploding marks to kind of come out further. So I want some down here. I want some in the corners. I want some here and here. So I'm kind of going to work on that kind of X pattern. So all I'm going to do is literally trace some of these fern leaves, right? Roughly, very roughly. Okay. And sometimes I kind of make some up, just kind of following those lines around, and that's okay too. Other times I'll also just use some of the line work, so I'm just kind of following some of those ferns. Just kind of using those marks. And it's okay if you miss. I also think sound effects help a little bit. Alright. So I have some of those ferns going on. And again, I'm only looking for things in the side and on the middle. So a lot of these things that I'm doing kind of down here might disappear the more I move it down, and that's also good. So more layers and more texture. So again, I get really messy with this kind of stuff, and a lot of these things just kind of come together. And if I don't like it, I can always go back a few steps. But really, it's about playing. And I'll kind of always adjust my brush size here and there. So I have a hotkey. That's my bracket left and bracket right. So I can easily shift between. You can see big and small, right? So I'll shift between like 10 pixels or 20 pixels every now and again. Normally I'd be checking this a lot more, like kind of like going back and forth and inverting to see if that's what I like. But since I already made this before, I already know I'm going to like it. Alright, maybe I just do one of those big lines in here. Okay. So I'm going to see I'm already getting some nice wider kind of X marks going in. So noticing it's a little sparse up here, so I'm going to go back in and just do a little more up there too. Alright, that's better. Alright, cool, so now I got all these really cool exploding ferns. What I don't like is that it's super green now. I'm going to move this down a few layers, let that layer a bit, maybe here, so you can see the difference, right? Between like letting it all hang out on top. I actually kind of like it on top, fuck it. Alright, so I don't like that's how green though, right? So I'm going to go down here and do another layer. I'm going to do hue and saturation. And what I don't want is that I don't want it to apply to everything. I want it just to apply to that fern layer. So if you kind of look in between the lines right here where my little cursor is, if you hold down Alt, you'll get this little arrow thing, right? So when you click and you're holding Alt, it'll actually adjust it to where it's only affecting that one layer. So you'll see that little arrow pop up there. So now it's only going to affect this layer. So here it is with without the adjustment touching that one layer. So it's affecting everything, right? But if I do this, Alt click on it in between the line, it'll only affect that fern. So I can really individually adjust all my colors. So again, I like that kind of like hot neon cyan type of thing, right? And I got some hot neons here for that cyan, so I'm going to do like a more subdued kind of cyan. And I can kind of desaturate or unsaturate. I can change the lightness of it. Really just kind of play with it a little bit. So now I'm going to go back and edit some of these individual layers of ferns, because again, I have a lot of green in the middle, right? So I'm going to go like halfway down. I'm going to do the same thing. But I don't really care to do an individual adjustment layer, so I'm just going to apply it directly to it. So that is Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, or Control U. So Control U, I'm just going to adjust a few layers. Again, you can see which ones are popping up and popping down. And I'm really just looking back and forth between the big image and my navigator over here to see like big changes and small changes. And I'm just looking at the overall color information. So again, I kind of like some of those pinks popping up on the bottom. And maybe I do a lower saturation or a higher saturation. Maybe right there. Okay. So now I want to look for something that's more up top. So where are those big, that one up top right here. Good. So I'm going to do this one also. So I'm going to play with this one a little bit. Maybe I get some different, let's see. Ooh, those dark blues are really nice, actually. Okay. That's beautiful. Okay, fantastic. All right. So I don't know what else I did after that. That's pretty close, though. Let's go look. Okay, this one just has different color information. Oh, the dots. Oh yeah, the dots. Okay. So this is a fun thing I like to do too. This is kind of like more playing around. So this is more about adding different scaling. So when I talk about scaling, I mean like the size of the marks. So you can see like how big this mark is here, and how this is a really large mark, and this is a slightly smaller but still pretty big. So my smallest marks are really kind of photographic right now, are these individual things. So I want to make some really small marks. So what I'll do is I'm going to zoom in really tight like this, and I'm going to look for little pockets that need information and where they need to help the composition. So right now I have a big X composition, right? But if I want to keep those leading lines going in, I can kind of enhance that a bit more. So if I got this big piece of house up here, I've got all these ferns coming in. So I kind of use this top left corner as a good starting point. So I'm going to make a new layer. And my general way I do this is I do a white exclusion layer. So I'm going to click on this black and white. I'm going to go to my paint bucket right here. Paint a big white layer on, go back down to my favorite menu, exclusion. You can see it gives me an inverted color of everything there, right? So it's always going to give me a really nice difference of whatever I'm doing. So I'm going to mask that out, invert that thing. Okay, so now I'm working with a black mask on that, so now I can just paint in whatever I want. So what I like to do is be really systematic with how I do these little details. So if you do control, and I'm not sure if that's a command and everything, control and then the little apostrophe mark or quotation mark on your keyboard, you get this cool grid up, right? So I can do a really systematic gridding system. So what I'll do is I'll go up to this little grid system. I'll get either a square brush or a round brush. Usually make it the size of one of these smallest grids and then just kind of paint in. So I'm just going to start from the corner up here and just kind of do like a weird pattern. So I'm going to do 3, skip, 3, skip. And like I stick to a pattern as long as I want to. Sometimes I break it up just so I can get extra pink marks like that. That's really cool. I might do another one right there too. Then maybe I will jump down and do another one, right? Okay. Really, it's about having fun. So I'm just kind of skipping around. I get to get this really cool color here, so I'm actually going to skip back up. Alright, and I'm kind of going to go down as far as I want to, maybe towards the middle right there. So again, I'm going to turn that on and off. So you can see that just kind of leads a nice little pattern in, and you get this really cool little color system going on. Okay, so I think for this one I did kind of like a split, kind of thing going on. So one scale going down, one scale going over. I'll do the same thing just for parity. So this one's kind of going this way. I'm going to have one kind of going this way, okay? So I'll put my grid back on. I'm going to do a slightly smaller dot. So again, scaling, right? So I'm going to do kind of like a quarter size of one of these corners. So I'm going to start right next to it. And this one's going to be kind of a much different one. So we're going to kind of go from bottom left corner, bottom right corner. Again, I kind of don't know what I'm doing half the time. So I'm just kind of doing it. I know I set a system, but again, I'm trying to have fun. And God, if you're not having fun doing this shit, I mean, what are we doing? And what's cool is that you kind of like lock your mouse on some of these marks. You can kind of make some cool marks as you go. So it doesn't have to be just one little dot. You can kind of like, you know, honestly do whatever the fuck you want. Okay. Alright, so now I got these cool little dot patterns. So I can do that all over if I want to. There's already a lot of information going on. That's actually quite nice. They got these nice little marks in here. I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, so you can see how that adds up pretty quickly. There's a lot of fucking layers over here. You can always go back and edit. So if some of these colors are too hot or too cold or whatever, like this green thing right here, maybe that's too green for me. So if you go back to your cursor here and do auto select, I can click on that layer. So yes, that is that green thing, right? Maybe that green's too hot. So I'm gonna go back and just edit the hue and saturation of it. So that's Control U. I'm going to adjust that until it's something that I want. I kind of like that quite a bit. So now we're moving with like tetradic colors, so even more complex. So get those nice yellows back in, those deep blues, those crazy magentas down there. That's way fucking better. Okay. So yeah, I'm just kind of going around until I'm happy with it. So it's actually adding another blue layer. But since it's inverted and excluded, we got that information. So that's all. Hope you enjoyed this little fun bit.